too. We're walking through these doors. First of all, I want to say thank you all so much for doing this, because we want to get all different points of view, and I know you guys have a specific point of view on this issue and some of the issues that we're tackling. I'm going to start by asking for a show of hands. How many of you all are carrying guns now? All of you.
The right to bear arms in defense of our country is one of the obligations and privileges of free men.
There is absolutely no reason why out on the street today a civilian should be carrying a loaded weapon.
President Kennedy was assassinated.
Ever since his brother's death, Robert Kennedy and all his family have been particularly aware of the violence of American society and the ease with which Americans obtain guns.
Martin Luther King was shot and was killed tonight.
Anybody can have a gun, anybody can have a rifle, but a person who's got a criminal record or is mentally incompetent shouldn't have a rifle or a gun. Is there anybody out here that thinks those people should have rifles or guns? Well, that's all the legislation does. It doesn't stop anybody from having a rifle or a gun.
We've just received our first news film taken at the Ambassador Hotel moments after Senator Kennedy was shot.
Senator Kennedy has been shot. Is that possible?
Oh, my God.
Senator Robert Francis Kennedy died at 1:40.
President Johnson signed into law today gun control legislation.
Today we begin to disarm the criminals and the careless, the insane.
The National Rifle Association has fought long and hard to keep guns out of the hands of the criminals, juveniles, the mental misfits.
The National Rifle Association convention in Cincinnati went into overtime last night, a stormy all-night session. When it was over, some dissident members had taken control of the 400,000-member organization.
One of the chief purposes of this convention is to keep the gun lobby.
The National Rifle Association claims its membership and resources to fight gun control have doubled in the last 2.5 years.
Well, the House of Representatives has now done it, loosened up the gun laws.
By a vote of 292 to 130, the House voted to weaken this country's gun control laws.
Make no mistake about it, law enforcement is not pleased. The cities are going to be less safe, and more people will be killed because of this legislation.
It ranks as the worst mass shooting in U.S. history.
If you will pass the Brady bill, I'll sure sign it.
They're going to take away every gun you own.
It's happened again. A mass shooting in an American school.
Representative Giffords was one of the victims.
Sandy Hook Elementary School in Connecticut and killed 20 children and 6 adults.
Well, I haven't been here. I haven't been this far down the road since that day. This is the road that I was in this school all the time. This was very familiar to me, and that morning it did not look familiar. I do remember that kind of sneaking up that despair when the kids were all amassing here in the firehouse, hundreds of kids, and as that group of kids started to wane and diminish, and it seemed like all the people that came out were out and gone and home. And I'm like, I want to get Daniel and go home.
The governor came out, didn't he?
Yes, he did. The governor came out. Who said 20 kids, 20 children are dead. I think we had the opportunity to go in and do an ID, but they advised against it. And I don't think we wanted to see Daniel that way. And, you know, state police matched with a picture.
It's really hard to explain. It's a bizarre feeling.
Yeah.
You know, that it's true, that it happened. And in some ways it feels like a dream, you know, also thinking about Daniel and our life. I mean, I am angry, but I feel like I can't feel that. You can't live feeling angry. I do sometimes think it's unfair, but it's you know, fleeting. I have to turn it into, look what we have.
I love you.
We could run up.
All right, I love you. I had the wonderful luxury of spending all day with my kids. As a stay-at-home dad, I worked at night, and I was able to just be with them. And it makes it, I think, that much more difficult to process this for me because it's over, you know. As time passes, you know, some of those memories are gonna fade, and it's just, I kind of have always seen it that way, like, even in the first few days. Like, I could say I was with Daniel 3 days ago. You know, now I have to say I was with Daniel 2.5 years ago. And then it's gonna be 5 years and 10 years, and he'll always be my little 7-year-old Daniel.
I don't want people to forget what happened, but I guess something does have to, you know, come from this.
The massacre of 20 first graders and 6 adults at Sandy Hook Elementary School devastated the nation.
I just want the people in Connecticut to know that we do not take what you're going through lightly.
Many saw what happened in Newtown as a watershed moment in the gun debate.
Coordinated attack. Outrage. We are killing each other.
And believed something was going to change.
At least 12 people were killed. Another mass shooting in America.
But as mass shootings continue to happen more and more frequently, in places we never could have imagined, the country reacted in exactly the same way it always has, time and time again.
Breaking news.
Breaking news, a grieving public, and the same question.
Why did it happen?
A pattern stuck on repeat.
We're tracking breaking news out of Roseburg. I don't even know why someone would do that.
Breaking news out of Louisiana.
How did this happen again?
Breaking news in Virginia.
Next week, it isn't going to be a story anymore, and everybody's going to forget it. Breaking news in San Bernardino, California.
You look at these things and you think it can't happen here, but so often we have seen these, and it's...
Most people think nothing changed after Newtown. But that's not entirely true. The question is, what has been done? And are we actually safer?
My face.
have the right holster on.
If I have my gun with me, I don't fear anything. As a mom, I'd like to be able to carry a weapon with me everywhere I go, because there's going to be that one psychopath that shows up. Every school shooting, it's always a calm, quiet place. Nobody would ever expect somebody in there with a gun to shoot everybody up. Nobody ever expects it. And that's the whole point. It happens where you don't expect it. And that's why we need to be able to protect ourselves. It is cold.
One of the ways in which the political turmoil played out after the Newtown massacres, you had essentially mobilization on both sides of the issue.
There's the police right there.
What's going on out here with your guns?
Who told you open carry was legal?
Gun rights activists, people who are promoting open carry of firearms, started pursuing that more aggressively.
Everybody say freedom.
Freedom.
There's a group in Texas called Open Carry Texas that started very aggressively carrying firearms into Chipotle and into Chili's and other, restaurants and into Target stores.
There's children here, and you're a dumbass.
We're here, we've got gear, get used to it.
You guys aren't just firearm enthusiasts, you're ammo-sexuals.
In the 12 months following the mass shooting at Sandy Hook, almost every state passed at least one new gun law. Nearly 2/3 of those laws eased restrictions and expanded the rights of gun owners.
Not everybody with a rifle is a bad guy. I suppose that someone could, in a grocery store, have a gun and decide all of a sudden I'm going to kill someone, though the facts are, when those shootings have happened, when those violent acts have happened, nobody walked around calmly with their gun on their back for an hour before they perpetrated this act. They went in there with a mission and they started shooting.
Is it hard to believe that this happened at a Safeway grocery store in the middle of Tucson, Arizona?
Just a normal Safeway.
And where was Gabby standing? Where, Gabby?
Yeah, I'll show you. Right where those water bottles are.
Where did he come from?
He was in the store.
And this guy he was just walking around the Safeway with these weapons?
Yep.
Not just the Democrats, but the independents, the Republicans, the Greens, the Libertarians, and the Vegetarians. I want to thank you.
During your campaign, some of your photos and everything showed your fiance, Mark Kelly, who is who?
He's an astronaut.
And has a wedding date been set? We've got to ask that question.
We actually do have a wedding date for November.
Oh, 911, there was a shooting at Safeway, and I do believe Gabrielle Gifford was hit.
Did you say Gabrielle Gifford was hit?
She's hit. Okay. I believe she's breathing. She was breathing. She still has a pulse.
Okay, and there's other people that are injured?
There's multiple people shot.
Okay. Oh, my God.
Doctors are optimistic about the chances of Gabrielle Gifford's recovery after a devastating gunshot wound to the head. She has pulled through surgery. She is in intensive.
It's not surprising that today Gabby was doing what she always does, listening to the hopes and concerns of her neighbors. She is currently battling for her life.
How about 2 fingers? All right.
Gabby, I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to nod with a yes, okay? Is your name Gabby? Up and down. Up and down. Washington. Washington.
close. Washington. Washington. Your voice is so beautiful.
It is.
Do you hear your voice? I'm Arizona. I'm Arizona. Hold on. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. I
24 hecklers target
Yes,
Grijalva.
yes.
Because of the gunshot wound and where it is and the damage it caused, you know, she understands everything really well. But her issue with speech is the transmission part.
Going to practice some more speech
Oh,
stuff?
yes, yes. Hello, boys and girls. No. Hello. Hello, Girl Scouts. It's been a long, hard haul, but I'm getting better. I'm working hard, lots of therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy, and yoga too. But
I like how you say that.
But my spirit's strong as ever. I'm still fighting to make the world a better place, and you can too. Get involved with your community. Strong women get things done. Thank you very much.
I think that's a good message for the Girl Scouts.
Yes.
Do you like being in the Girl Scouts?
Awesome.
Really?
Yes.
I didn't like the Cub Scouts all that much.
Oh, boo.
It's the worst. The only thing good about it was we got to go to Burger King. It was like the best place ever.
Ever.
When Gabby was shot, she was in the hospital for 6 months, and I had a final space shuttle mission to complete. So this gun violence issue was not something that we spent a lot of time thinking about. It was really what happened at the Sandy Hook Elementary School that woke us up.
Stopping gun violence takes courage. The courage to do what's right, the courage of new ideas.
How many of you all are carrying guns now? All of you. For people who don't own guns, explain their appeal.
I do carry a firearm for personal defense, but I really enjoy target shooting, and I really enjoy working with people to show them that this piece of metal is not as scary as the movies make it look.
There's many, many, many reasons why somebody would own a gun aside from self-defense. Collectors, I have some guns that I'll never shoot. They're just cool and pretty and fun to look at. I find target shooting to be therapeutic and relaxing. I have a machine gun that's really fun to shoot. Everybody has their own forms of entertainment. Some people like to go to the drag strip and race cars. That's not my thing. I like to shoot guns.
Many people do say if you have to go through some kind of training and have to pass a test to drive a car, why wouldn't you have to do the same to buy and own a gun?
Because the Second Amendment is very clear about that. Driving is not a specifically enumerated constitutional right. The right to keep and bear arms, on the other hand, is.
Do you think that people should have to pass a background check before they purchase a gun?
No. You might better say, is there anybody here who thinks such a thing? I don't think so.
Why?
Taking a background check is nothing more than gun registry, where the government says, okay, let's see, Katie's got one of these, and one of these. So in their future plan, when they come knocking at your door going, we show you have these 3 guns and now they're illegal in your state and we'd like them, please, or who you gave them to.
So how many of you all are afraid that the government will try to take away your guns?
One of the cliches that we often hear is that if we pass any regulation at all, even the most modest regulation, that it will lead to confiscation of firearms. And so it's an interesting thing to respond to. We just want to take away all your guns. Well, actually, that can never happen because the Supreme Court has spoken to this issue. And the Supreme Court has said you have a Second Amendment right to have a gun in your home for self-defense.
Well, today the U.S. Supreme Court issued the most important decision ever on gun rights in America.
Writing for the majority, Justice Antonin Scalia said the Constitution's Second Amendment protects an individual's right to keep and bear arms.
He made clear not to throw out all gun control laws, stating flatly the Second Amendment right is not unlimited.
Here we have the Supreme Court supporting the Second Amendment. Let's take that argument off the table. We're talking about now you have a right to own a gun, but also in that decision, they basically said that municipalities and states also had the right to protect their people from gun violence.
Let me ask you another question. If there are no background checks for gun purchasers, how do you prevent felons or terrorists from purchasing a gun? The background check is considered the first line of defense, and 90% of Americans agree it's a good thing. It works like this. If you want to buy a gun and go to a gun store, you fill out a form, and that form gets entered into the National Instant Criminal Background Check System, or NICS. Provided you're of legal age, you're not a criminal, and haven't been committed by your state because of mental illness, you should have no problem buying a gun, usually within a matter of minutes. Sounds simple, but it's not. Each state has its own set of laws, and in most states, you can be given a gun by a family member or close friend without a background check.
Hey, are you from Arms List? Hey, cool. Good to meet you. Good.
You can also buy or sell a gun on websites like armslist.com with no background check and no questions asked.
Works for me. Cool. 809. All right. Yeah, we don't have to do any paperwork or anything, right? We're all good? Not at all. Great. Yeah.
And you can buy a gun at a gun show from a private seller without a background check. And in many cases, that's the appeal.
Okay, so I don't have to do anything else other than show you my license?
This is known as the gun show loophole.
This gap we have in the background check system would be like if when you went to fly out of an airport, there was a line where you could choose to go through security and take off your shoes and your jacket and put all your stuff through the metal detector. And then there was another line where there was no metal detector, there was no TSA, and you just got to walk right on the airplane. And what if we had 40% of the people taking that line?
Lastly, in most states, you can buy as many guns as you want at a gun shop. What you can't do is buy those guns for another person. That's called a straw purchase.
It is illegal right now for a person to go into a gun store with the intention of buying a gun for someone else. But it is totally legal for somebody to go into a gun store, buy a gun for themselves, and then sell it to someone else 2 days later without a background check.
In 2013, just 4 months after the massacre at Newtown, a bill was proposed to Congress to close these loopholes and make background checks mandatory for all gun purchases. But the National Rifle Association, the biggest political lobby for gun rights in America, fought hard to block this bill. And they succeeded.
The yeas are 54. The nays are 46. The amendment is not agreed to.
It died in the Senate.
To think that the Congress of the United States could not react and pass a law that would not have confiscated a single firearm and would only have operated in the future to prevent people who shouldn't have guns from getting them, to me, that was the NRA's, well, greatest moment.
This is your moment in history. This is your national movement. You want to save this country and all that is good and right about America? Come on, I want them to hear you all the way back to the White House. Never back down. And always, always, with all your heart, stand and fight for our great American freedom. Thank you very much.
This is the NRA today, a political powerhouse.
Yep.
But it wasn't always that way. Started by Union generals in 1871, the NRA was founded to improve military marksmanship. Over the years, it became known as a hunting and sportsman organization with a focus on gun safety.
The National Rifle Association makes its first appearance in the Tournament of Roses. Behind them, children are being taught the safe use of firearms.
And the NRA made public efforts to stay out of politics.
The NRA is a nonprofit. We're not a lobby. In 100 years of its existence, it's never been involved in politics.
But all that changed in 1968 when new gun laws took effect in response to the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy.
The FBI is investigating to determine whether the National Rifle Association engages in lobbying without registering as a lobbyist.
Behind the scenes, safety and marksmanship began to take a back seat to a more political agenda. And this became clear one night in the spring of 1977.
It's still called the Revolt at Cincinnati. At the NRA annual meeting in 1977, activists voted out the old leadership, voted in new leadership that was much more ideological, much more passionately devoted to the idea of remaking the NRA as a crusade for the Second Amendment.
A monstrous invasion of the rights to privacy of you law-abiding and decent people who have never committed a crime and concerning whom there's no evidence you ever will.
And that kicked off a decade-long campaign to repeal the 1968 gun control bill.
We support congressional initiatives to remove those provisions of the Gun Control Act of 1968.
By 1986, they had succeeded.
Well, the House of Representatives has now done it, loosened up the gun laws.
I guess you have to say that the gun lobby is probably the most effective lobby there is in America.
I think we're in good shape on the votes.
Wayne LaPierre did it behind the scenes. It was his job to convince so many congressmen to vote the way the NRA wanted them to vote.
The face of the organization now is no longer a hunter or a marksman or an expert in gun safety.
Our guest this morning, Wayne LaPierre, the top official of the NRA, the National Rifle Association.
Wayne LaPierre is a career lobbyist who started working for the NRA the year after the revolt in Cincinnati.
It's black and white, all or nothing. You're with us or against us.
And he led the battle to stop any form of gun regulation, including attempts to close the loopholes.
Should we have mandatory background checks at gun shows for sales of weapons?
If you're a dealer, that's already the law. If you're talking...
That's not my question. Please, Ms. LaPierre, I'm not trying to play games here, but if you could, it'd help everything. Just answer my question.
Senator, I do not believe the way the law is working now, unfortunately, that it does any good to extend the law to private sales between hobbyists and collectors.
She loved
got a gunshot wound. 14, we need a second ambulance for another gunshot wound at 6553 Cardinal, IV Deli, Marshall Street.
The Santa Barbara County Sheriff Bill's calling this a premeditated mass murder. Callers describe a shooting spree by someone driving around in a BMW SUV. 7 dead, 7 injured and hospitalized. As for the weapon that was used in this shooting spree, police say it was a semi-automatic handgun that was recovered at the scene where the suspect himself was killed.
Our son Christopher Martinez and 6 others are dead. You don't think it'll happen to your child until it does. Why did Chris die? Chris died because of craven, irresponsible politicians and the NRA. They talk about gun rights. What about Chris's right to live? When will this insanity stop? When will enough people say, stop this madness? We don't have to live like this. Too many have died. We should say to ourselves, not one more. Thank you. That's it.
You can hear the anger and the grief of this man talking about Christopher Martinez slamming the politicians, slamming the NRA. You can see that he is just overwhelmed by grief.
Yeah, this was his car. He loved this car. He got it in high school. And the thing was that we bought him a stereo. We got it installed a couple days after Christmas, this past Christmas. And then he and I, as soon as it got installed, we got in the car and we drove down to Hollywood. And we kicked around down in Hollywood for a couple of days. We went out on Hollywood Boulevard on Friday night. We had dinner at Musso and Frank's, and we didn't have the money to, have any big vacation, but we had a lot of fun. We had a great time. It was a great time. The last image I have of my son is in the mortuary, laying on that table. And just cold and hard and still and, just life drained out of him, just laying there. It's just the most horrific thing you can imagine. I changed his diapers when he was a baby. I carried him around,
Why are you driving this car?
Now I just like driving it, and I think I'm going to sell mine and keep this one, just because it's a way of, connecting, staying close to him. So. Hi, kids. Now I see little kids, and I think, I don't want that little kid to die like my kid. There you go. That's just unacceptable.
I can't even begin to...
People have asked me, who's responsible? Well, we're all friggin' responsible. I've come to understand, too late for my son, that there's an epidemic in this country. The Sandy Hook parents went to Congress and tried to get something done. And Congress did nothing. And the rest of us did nothing. I didn't do anything. If I had done something then, my son might be alive.
Why do you think Congress did nothing?
Because they're afraid. They're afraid of the gun lobby.
Well, I think the gun lobby has been very effective at working the system in Congress to try to get the results it wants. For example, they've been able to limit the authority and tie the hands of ATF.
In 1986, the year the NRA lobbied to weaken the nation's gun laws,
I think we're looking good. It's important to redirect this law.
the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives the ATF, became stuck by federal law in a time warp where they've been prohibited from computerizing any records.
So the ATF is legally not allowed to computerize their records, and why is that?
They're not allowed to maintain a computerized record of gun sales. It was specifically prohibited in 1986, which was no accident. That was a direct result of NRA lobbying. The assumption is that it's a de facto registry of firearms, which is the ultimate boogeyman for a lot of people in the gun lobby, that a registry will somehow inevitably lead to confiscation.
When a gun is recovered at a crime scene, the first call police make is to the ATF. Using the serial number, the ATF's job is to track down who owns the gun.
Even some law enforcement agencies think there's a database here that you type in a serial number, you can figure out who bought a gun. And it's not. It's a manual process of searching through microfilm or searching through some digital images or searching through some of these boxes. So on average, ATF's National Tracing Center receives over 1 million records per month. But once we exceed 10,000 boxes in process, the floor will collapse. So we actually have to store the records out. Right now we got 2 or 3 shipping containers outside of excess records that we can't store in here for safety reasons. These have been out here for a little while. When the snow was flying, people put on snowmobile suits and they come out and they search for the records.
This might not be a big deal if it was 1989 when the ATF received under 3,000 trace requests. But in 2014, they had to process more than 360,000 by hand. %30 of all those traces will fail, leaving many crimes unsolved. And the impact is devastating.
My son, Thomas Lee, was shot and killed August 13, 2008. His case is still unsolved.
My son, Leno Diaz, was shot multiple times in his car. His case is still unsolved.
My son was David Russell. His case is still unsolved.
His case is unsolved.
The case is still unsolved. It'll be 3 years Sunday.
The case is unsolved. It was 3 months ago.
We talk about 5 people or 6 people shot somewhere in a mass shooting or in a mall or at Fort Hood or whatever, and the whole country is outraged, as they should be. But that happens on a night in Chicago, and they call it another night in Chicago.
Shooting violence has gotten so bad in Chicago that gunfights are breaking out now at existing crime scenes.
Schools that in this past school year, 31 school students.
He saw a number of what appear to be school-aged teenagers running from the
call a gang-related shooting.
Violence so typical, it didn't even make the front page.
How do you all feel when the country pays so much attention to mass shootings in other communities, in Columbine, Newtown, Aurora?
I think what it tells us is that it's just, there's 2 societies, unfortunately. You don't get the same attention. You don't get the same sense of urgency. You don't get the same sense of resources. You don't get the grief counselors coming out. You just don't.
Looking at young black males or young black females thinking they're in gangs or they're not honor students or they don't have a mother and a father. When we can dehumanize them, you can just write them off and say, oh, they were probably gang banging or they were drug dealing or they were doing something they weren't supposed to do. Everybody in this circle, their children or their loved one was doing exactly what they were supposed to do. Exactly.
My son was trying to go to the Air Force. He was going to college. He was trying to make something out of his life. He wanted to better himself for his daughter. So all kids in Chicago are not bad.
Trey, just give us a layup. Hey, wait a minute. What's your jeans on too tight? $5 you missed. No backboard. Backboard don't count.
Can you take out the garbage for a week if I hit?
I want $10.
Oh, pressure's on.
We have more guns than we have on our streets than we have people. You can hear gunshots once a week, once every other week. So that's why I'm so afraid to have my children go out, play basketball, walk to the store, and it's a basketball court, maybe like 2 blocks from my house. I don't let them go there because I'm afraid of them being shot. So they actually have to stay right back at my house and shoot basketball. And I feel bad as a mother to treat them like that, but I just cannot afford to lose another child to violence. I can't do it.
Tiny tots with their eyes on the globe will find it hard to sleep tonight.
Terrell always was in front, always doing things. Even in grammar school, Terrell was he played in all types of plays. He was the lion in The Wiz. And then he played in Annie. He was on the football team. Then he got in a band. He learned how to play the bass guitar. He always was active.
Man, third right there.
We kept him in baseball, basketball, just doing all the things we could do as a parent to protect him and to keep him out the streets. I got up and got ready to go to work, and Terrell was asleep, and I woke him up like, hey, I'm going to work. Then later he called me. He was like, Mom, I'm going to church. I'm at church. So I said, be careful. He was like, Mom, come on now. You always worry. I'm at church.
Pam Bosley's son, Terrell, was shot in this church parking lot just before band practice. The police still haven't found the killer.
His case is still unsolved. It's so many stories that's unsolved, and the first thing they say is gang-related. So how can you say gang-related when you don't know what happened?
One of our major problems in our communities, easy access to guns. They can get a gun faster than they can get an education, a job, or something to eat.
We talked to 6th and 7th graders. We was asking them, can you get a gun? Do you know how to get a gun? And majority of them raised their hand. Yeah, my friend had one. I can borrow my friend's. Oh, it's a man selling them out the trunk for $25. Everybody knew how to get a gun.
Where did these kids get the guns?
Legal gun owners are purchasing guns, straw purchases, and they're selling guns on the black market. And it's like sold right out of the back of a car or right at a gun show or online. When you get a person coming in buying 20 guns, something should go up saying, hey, you're not a dealer or you're not a collector. Why are you buying all these guns? What are you gonna do with it?
We're losing a whole generation of our youth. It's not gang-related issues. The crime is on humanity. And unfortunately, this is something that society has created, and our kids are the ones that end up in situations that they should never be in.
I don't think the public really realizes what a problem we have. Kids in the United States are 4 times as likely to be shot as kids in Canada, 7 times as likely as kids in Israel, 65 times more likely than kids in Great Britain.
These are countries that are watching American TV shows, Hollywood movies, that are playing video games. These are very culturally comparable countries with some pretty significant differences about the role of guns in their culture.
If you consider that 32,000 people die every year in this country, to gun-related tragedies, if anything else, if there were a terrorist organization doing that or a disease doing that, we would be absolutely committed to fixing that.
It's really a question that
culturally, we have to decide. Is it okay to suffer the consequence of, every now and then, a Sandy Hook or an Aurora Theater or Virginia Tech, or, you know, you name your event. And to me, it's very clear society either has to say, no, we've had enough, stop those events, or, okay, as one of the former executives of the National Rifle Association was quoted as saying, that's the cost of liberty.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic.
One of the complexities of the NRA is that most gun owners don't want criminals and domestic violence abusers and people who are dangerously mentally ill to have guns.
Do you think people should have to pass a background check before they can buy a gun?
Yes. Background check, yes.
Yes, I think background check needs to be done.
Universal background checks?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
No.
No?
No.
At all?
No.
I think that everybody should have to go through a background check. Yeah. I mean, I don't see why that would hurt.
When you poll gun owners and poll NRA members, they overwhelmingly support common sense measures like universal background checks. 74% of the membership agrees with it.
Most of their members don't join because they agree with the politics of the leadership. They join because they get discounts at shooting ranges or they get discounts at gun stores. They send in their $35 in order to get these benefits, not because they're against background checks. Even if you believe they have 4 or 5 million members, that's still only 5% at best of gun owners. So there's a huge, huge silent majority not being heard on this issue. The NRA pretend to speak for all gun owners, but they bring in a lot of money from the gun manufacturers, from the gun industry. That's who they're representing politically.
Mike, I want to thank you, Ruger, so much. This makes such a difference.
It turns out many of the NRA board members have been key players in the gun industry.
Businessmen, whether they're washing machine manufacturers or firearm machine manufacturers, there's a bottom line. It's about making money.
When the NRA successfully lobbied to loosen the laws in 1986, gun sales were on the decline. But the new law helped open the door for thousands of prospective gun dealers all across the country.
The firearms licensee population has increased by over 21,000 licensees, and the applications are coming in at the rate of 1,500 a week.
How long would it take to inspect all of the 280,000 licensees out there?
Oh, it would take us roughly 10 to 12 years to get around to all of them with the present level of resources.
With little regulation or oversight, a new market emerged.
Militarized type weapons, semi-automatic assault rifles, and high-capacity semi-automatic handguns suddenly became very popular.
How do you sell more guns to people who already have them?
I love American freedom, baby.
You come out with new guns, you come out with bigger guns. We have no regulation of assault weapons. We have no regulation of large capacity magazines.
There are no restrictions on how many guns you can buy at any given time, how many rounds of ammunition you can buy, plates of body armor, and you can buy essentially the exact same gun that is used to penetrate armor plating at a mile away, that can down jetliners on takeoff and landing. And the NRA, working hand in hand with the industry, says you must go out and buy these guns before they're banned. And this paranoid marketing really has defined the way they try and motivate buyers today.
That registry will be used to confiscate your guns.
They instill fear by saying the agenda is to take your guns away, and they convince people of that. And it's effective.
If you go back to Columbine and Aurora and Virginia Tech, every time there is a mass shooting in this country, gun sales dramatically rise, and experts say that's because people believe the government will ban certain types of weapons.
And certainly it is very motivating to hear that their guns are going to be taken away, but it's simply not possible.
We're about to
be victim of a siege.
We always have to have a threat, and whether it's members of Congress, whether it's legislation, whether it's the president.
If President Obama gets reelected, our individual right to own a firearm is going to be gone.
Whether it's the threatened apocalypse that they seem to believe in so deeply.
There are drug cartels, carjackers, knockout gamers, and rapers, and haters,
And when you read the NRA's materials, the argument is that the government is going to collapse.
that could collapse our society that sustains us all.
And when the government does collapse, who are you going to rely on?
Do you trust this government to protect you?
The NRA recognized that, well, this is a way to sell more guns.
Firearms in the hands of good people save lives.
This is their argument. More guns is better, makes us safer. And it's an absolute fallacy. States where there's more guns, there are more gun deaths. States with less guns, less gun deaths. More guns does not make you safer.
I'll tell you, it doesn't get much more divisive of an issue than this. Ohio State law says you can carry a gun in public for anyone to see. Kroger says it's not going to stop you in its stores. Now, one group of moms wants that to change.
We are driving over to where Kroger is holding its annual investor relations meeting to ask them to do the right thing once again and stop open carry of firearms inside their grocery stores. And where are they? In there?
They're in, yeah.
That's awesome. Oh, I love that the moms have capes on. That's so great. And there's parking here too, which is nice. Talk to us! Talk to us! Talk to us!
I'm Sandra from Cincinnati. Thanks so much for starting this
organization. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you for coming today.
I have a 7-year-old son, so Sandy Hook really hurt.
Thank you so much. Basically what happened was that I came home the day after Sandy Hook, and I just was so angry. I had all this energy, and I needed to do something. And so I did the only thing I really knew how to do at the time, which was to create a Facebook page. But that Facebook site itself touched a nerve, and it began being shared rapidly, and people were liking it and wanting to get involved. And when women get involved in this country, things get done. You know, we've seen that from child labor laws to suffrage to Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And I do think that's the power of moms. My love for my children and my concern for them is unstoppable. And I think that's unique in many ways to women. I mean, also we're great at multitasking. We can do a lot at once.
Groceries, not guns! Groceries, not guns!
The group Moms Demand Action, well, in the past, the group has been successful. They convinced Target, Starbucks, and Chipotle to change their policies on guns. But so far, Kroger is not backing down.
Kroger executives are just feet away from us, yet they have not come out. They should be willing to come out here and meet with moms. And so that's what we're here to ask them today, to either change their open carry policy or to sit down with us and explain why they won't listen to 80% of their customer base.
Got that?
I can't imagine there's any group of people that receives more vitriol than the women involved in gun violence prevention. It's constant, it's ugly, it's in person, and it's online, and it's really shocking. You might be the next one shot along with your other bitches. That might teach you to keep your lips shut and out of things you're too stupid to know anything about. Go back to the bedroom where you belong. This is Raging Rob, and he makes a lot of videos at me, usually telling me to put a dick in my mouth, but let's see.
Open carry is legal in 40 states. Until the Mothers Demand action shuts the f*** up, I'm gonna send photos of Kroger, of me inside Kroger, outside Kroger, with my gun, inside Kroger, whatever, and I'm gonna send them every day until Moms Demand Action shuts the f*** up. Move on, put a in your mouth, and shut up.
So that's one of our charming followers. These are the people that call themselves responsible gun owners, or people who, you know, are fighting for so-called constitutional carry, where they don't want any permit at all to carry, and yet they're so angry online and offline. It's just kind of a dichotomy.
Hey, how are you doing? I finally had my baby. The last time you saw her, she was in my tummy.
There are two different ways of looking at people, and I think it defines the difference between people who feel very strongly about gun rights and people who feel very strongly about gun regulation. People who feel very strongly about gun rights divide the world, divide America into good guys and bad guys. Wayne LaPierre says it takes a good guy with a gun to stop a bad guy with a gun.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
The only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun.
The problem is people are not sorted out into good people and bad people. Everybody has the potential for some kind of conduct, whether it's anger, depression, fear, sudden mental disorder, to do something bad with a gun.
Hey, babe, is my gun okay like that?
Yeah, should be fine.
We studied 70 public mass shootings, and not a single one was stopped this way by an ordinary citizen who happened to be there with a firearm.
Pull. When Gabby was shot and 6 of her constituents were murdered, there was a guy who had a gun. But when he heard the gunshots being fired, he ran out and with the best of intentions almost made the mistake of shooting the wrong person. So what we had was this horrific mass murder almost turn into an additional horrific accident.
I just fucking shot myself.
And a lot of these folks that carry a gun are not very well trained. So what often happens is the good guy with the gun turns into the moron with the gun.
Oh, son of a bitch!
Sandy is really a better shot than I am. This weapon is a 12 gauge, which will stop a bear at close range. Do I feel safer with the gun? I don't really think about it that much. Like I said, the night we got the call about Jesse's death, and when I heard the screaming from the other room, I thought she was being attacked by a home intruder. She screamed so loud and so horrifically, I forgot the shotgun. I just went to go hand to hand with whoever was attacking her. And when I got to the living room, she was by herself, backed against the wall, screaming, "Please tell me she's not dead."
Once again today, Americans absorbed the news of a mass shooting. A dozen dead, at least 59 hurt or wounded. It happened in the city of Aurora, just east of Denver, where a movie theater erupted in late-night chaos.
A man in a gas mask standing in front of the screen threw a tear gas canister, then opened fire. The gunman was standing there firing at people just a few feet away. One of the victims was Jessica Gawi, who escaped a shooting at a mall in Toronto just last month.
Lonnie,
Yes, dear.
do you want to grab that picture of Jesse to take with us?
It's in here?
Uh-huh.
It's in the bedroom, isn't it?
The one that's by the fire.
Her friend Brent was visiting her in Colorado. And when the shooting started in the theater, Brent knew what they were dealing with, that this is live fire.
At this point, it'd be good to know that Brent has a concealed carry license. The only reason he didn't have his weapon is he flew there without it.
Yeah, and as gun owners, that was one of the first questions I asked Brent was, if you had had your weapon, would it have made a difference? And he said, absolutely not. In the chaos that was there, he said, more innocent people would have been killed. He said, there was nothing we could do. We were trapped. We were trapped. It was an ambush. Jessie went away to work in Colorado, but having started her media career here in San Antonio, they were some of the first people to reach out, and they were so kind and so gentle because they loved Jessie.
Hi.
How you doing? One of the things that used to make me chuckle about her is that she had an amazing talent of making you feel like you were her greatest friend.
I'm surprised. She tried to convince me a million times to skip school and go to Vancouver with her, which I didn't even have a passport, and she told me not to worry about.
You know what I remember? Her first hockey interview. She was interning for the radio station here, and not knowing that the interview was going to take place on the ice, so she wore her high heels.
Hey, what's going on? I so got that on camera. I so just happened to start recording right when that happened. Well, you just showed me. Frankfurt, Germany. I can't do that. You're live.
I can be the intern. I can interview you if you want to.
I think I'm gonna host the interview, pal.
Ask me about the... And you should probably face the camera a little bit. Yeah. There we go. Or not.
Can we please see?
You're at 760 WJR. You're nailing it. I'm telling you what.
I know. I'm doing such a great job. This is full of fail. Okay, y'all struggled with the Texas Stars. What's that been about?
You know, we were...
What I remember the most and what touches me the most is she completed the interview and got in the car and called me at work and said, I've destroyed my career before I even got one. Nobody's ever going to take me seriously. So this very lighthearted girl that could laugh things off publicly is a lot deeper than most people realized. And those of us here know that.
On behalf of this flight crew, Southwest Airlines, welcome to Denver. Please remain seated, your seatbelt fastened, seatback sensor enabled, pull upright and lock position.
The Colorado Batman shooter trial begins in Centennial, Colorado. Good morning, Alex Stone.
Hey, McGraw, good morning to you. Yeah, it's been almost 3 years now, and today Holmes will arrive in the courtroom with a jury looking at him for the first time.
Closing in on 3 years since a mass shooting at a movie theater in Aurora, Colorado left 12 people dead.
Holmes has pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Prosecutors argue that he was sane, and they're pushing for the death penalty in this case. Let's bring in our legal guy.
Welcome to Denver.
Our anger and our disgust.
More like welcome to hell.
In the legal system, we punish people based on...
For us to be gun owners and for us to be actually registered Republicans, we had to come to grips with how easy it was for that killer of our daughter to get those weapons.
In fact, people sold him 6,000 rounds of ammunition over the internet and didn't question why he might want it. Why is he asking for riot gear when he's not a police officer or in the military? Why is he needing tear gas? And nobody questioned it.
The firearms industry is the last manufacturer of a consumer product that's not regulated for health and safety in the United States. It used to be guns and tobacco, now it's just guns. If you compare a child's teddy bear to a handgun, teddy bears are in fact more tightly regulated for health and safety than handguns are. And so the first thing that we have to do is to get a handle on the gun industry.
There is a new strategy in tackling gun violence. Go after the gun manufacturers.
In the 1990s, there were a bunch of lawsuits by municipalities. You know, cities that suffered a lot of gun violence, so cities started suing the gun manufacturers.
In Springfield, Massachusetts, demonstrators took their grief to the front door of a major American handgun manufacturer, Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson was hit especially hard, and its leadership was forced to take action in exchange for immunity from litigation.
Under the agreement, Smith & Wesson will include locking devices and other safety features, and will develop smart guns that can be fired only by the adults who own them.
Rather than to support a company that's trying to make a safer product, there was a very swift response from the gun lobby, and that was to boycott Smith & Wesson.
Smith & Wesson sales plummeted 40%. 2 plants suspended production, and hundreds of employees were out of work.
They wanted to send a message that you play by our rules or you will go out of business.
The board fired the management of Smith & Wesson, and they backed out of the agreement.
In order to get back on its feet, Smith & Wesson made amends with its customers by introducing a new line of assault rifles. The very same assault weapon that was used in the Aurora Theater massacre.
Sources say over the past few months, he assembled a deadly arsenal, body armor, and a Smith & Wesson semi-automatic assault rifle.
And as far as all those lawsuits, thanks to Congressman James Sensenbrenner, Congress passed a bill making it illegal to sue gun manufacturers.
Mr. James Sensenbrenner has saved all these gun makers that are here today from certain financial ruin.
God bless you all, and God bless America.
But he's not the only politician tied to the NRA's agenda.
People ask me all the time, how does the NRA have so much influence over the members of Congress and legislation? And it's very simple. It's putting fear into the members of Congress. It's the money that they put into elections. The members of Congress here have come up to me many times and said, Carolyn, I'd like to vote for your gun legislation, but I can't do that. That's not why I came here, and I want to come back. And so they're always thinking about their own re-election.
What their real power derives from is not so much the money they spend, but the fear they instill. That they are going to actually punish you.
We used to kid around that NRA stood for never re-elected again. And as I've said to many congressmen and senators in the last several years, you can look at the poll data, but understand this, Senator, the only people that matter on this issue are gun owners. Because only gun owners are going to actually vote for or against you based on your position on guns.
Everything that was important to me before Chris died is not important to me now. I was attorney for many, many years, and I've not been back in the courtroom since, and I have no interest in doing so. The only thing that interests me anymore now is working to make sure that other parents don't have to experience the loss that my family did.
Closing the background check loophole by passing 594 is one of the very effective ways of reducing gun violence. Let's get out that vote, set an example for
This fall, guns will take center stage on Washington's November ballot with Initiative 594.
If passed, it would widen the scope of background checks. To buy, sell, or transfer ownership of a gun or firearm, you would be required to work through a licensed dealer, public or private, so a background check can be done.
We are
Headed into the last stretch of the campaign, that probably, there's no doubt about it, that this is the most important weekend of the entire election.
So what we're doing tonight is encouraging supporters of Initiative 594 to turn in their ballots.
I think a ballot initiative is a very smart strategy on the issue of gun violence. With 90% of Americans supporting stronger background checks on gun sales, maybe the best way to do it is to put the issue right in front of the voters and skip the politician part of the process.
Hey, my name's Lonnie Phillips. I'm a volunteer.
I'm phone banking for Initiative 594.
Do you guys think that since this is such an important election that you'll be voting and sending that ballot back in?
Thank you.
Ballot initiatives is a interesting strategy. It's an expensive and challenging strategy. You really need to build a strong movement within the state.
I'm a little embarrassed to say that it took the greatest tragedy for me to become engaged.
You need to gather typically hundreds of thousands of signatures. So it's a big, big organizing commitment, and it's very difficult to do that.
I can't speak for my wife, but I will certainly share this with her.
When politicians are being bullied behind the scenes, the average citizen doesn't know how to contend with that. But when it's on the ballot and all of the attacks have to be in the public arena, it creates a totally different ballgame.
I'm a proud American for every single reason that stands behind the word American. Vote no. That's my message.
I'm going to vote no. I don't want it. They're taking away our rights.
The founding fathers have got to be rolling over in their graves over this.
I don't think anyone who studies this issue suggests that background checks would single-handedly stop mass shootings or stop the kind of daily gun violence that we have going on in the country. But it's viewed as a key issue in terms of moving toward reducing gun violence.
America is absolutely awash with easily obtainable firearms. You can go down to a gun show at the local convention center and come away with a fully automatic assault rifle without a background check and most likely without having to show an identification card. So what are you waiting for?
You know, your background check system is weak, even when Al-Qaeda makes a video pointing out how easily attainable guns are in the U.S.
One of the issues that's come up a lot in the last few years is that anyone who is on the terror watch list is not prohibited from buying a gun.
How do you feel about the fact that a person on the government's terror watch list can't board a plane but can legally buy a gun?
Say that again?
If you're on the terror watch list? I actually didn't hear that.
How do you feel about the fact that a person on the government's terror watch list can't board a plane but can legally buy a gun?
That's a good one.
I don't think he should be allowed to buy a gun if he's on a terrorist watch list.
I think anyone who's on the terrorist watch list should not lose their Second Amendment rights without the ability to challenge that determination. I did not want to make that the basis to take someone's Second Amendment rights away.
Thousands on the government's terrorist watch list bought firearms in the last decade.
So you're allowing people on the terror watch list to buy 100-round ammunition magazines, AR-15s, and stockpile these weapons if they so desire.
I think there is that line of thought that it's better to allow that person to get a gun than in any way infringe on anybody's rights to own or buy a gun. And I disagree. I think if you're a domestic abuser, you're a felon, you're dangerously mentally ill, we should make it as hard as possible for them to get a gun. They should be allowed to buy guns. They currently aren't under federal law. But we have loopholes that make it easy.
Beyond the gun show loophole and easy access to firearms online, there's another gaping hole in the current system. Since 1998, over 2 million gun purchases have been stopped because the buyers failed a background check. But millions of sales have slipped through the cracks simply because of time. Most background checks take 90 seconds to complete. If something is flagged in your form, the FBI has 3 days to see if there's something legitimate prohibiting you from buying a gun. The problem is there's no central computerized database. So it's common for it to take more than 3 days for the FBI to determine if a background check failed. If the FBI can't sort it out in 3 days, the gun sale goes through by default.
There are a lot of records in the criminal background check system that take more time to actually determine whether the person who was charged with something was actually convicted.
To date, over 1 million background checks have exceeded the 3-day window, allowing more than 50,000 guns to be sold to prohibited buyers, including the mass shooter in Charleston, who killed 9 people in a church.
It's a marshmallow world in the winter when the snow comes to cover the ground. It's time for play.
All right, it's 20 after 12. We just picked up Natalie early at school, and we're gonna go pick up James. And then we're gonna go to Daniel's concert.
Come on, Daddy.
All right, here we go. We're on our way.
Come on, Daddy.
How could this happen? Why would somebody do this? If this happened in our little Sandy Hook Elementary School down a quiet country lane in Newtown, Connecticut, this can absolutely happen to anyone, anywhere. Okay. Yeah, I'll put that in the calendar. I think with Sandy Hook Promise, we're looking really focusing on the intervention and prevention space before the firearm is in the equation, right? Because when you start talking about guns, it usually turns into an argument about rights versus freedoms, and the whole thing collapses and you go nowhere. We just want to get away from that and get in front of that and start talking about what causes somebody, what leads to that decision to hurt themselves or other people.
The guns that were used at Sandy Hook, Aurora, and Virginia Tech were all purchased legally. So why do you think background checks are important when it comes to reducing this kind of violence?
It's one component toward making our communities safer. It's one part of it. It's not the end-all, be-all, and it wouldn't have changed what happened in Sandy Hook. If you think about automobile safety, not one component is saving those lives, right? It's not just seatbelts, not just speed limits, it's not just crumple zones, it's not just airbags, it's all of that together. So there's this whole fabric of ideas and philosophies that go with that have brought the numbers of automobile-related casualties and fatalities way down. And so that's kind of how we're approaching this, is there's a whole lot of little things that have to go into this.
Preparing for day 20 of the Aurora Theater shooting trial. This is a pivotal point today.
The definition of legal insanity will be a difficult hurdle for the defense. They have to prove he didn't know right from wrong.
He's found not guilty by reason of insanity. He goes to a mental institution, although the judge cannot sentence him to life in the mental institution.
Every time a mass shooting makes headlines, mental illness takes center stage.
They say he is mentally ill.
An ongoing mental illness.
Apparent mental health problems.
Profound emotional disability.
Very mentally ill.
We tend to say that it's mental health is what causes some of these crazy acts of gun violence, and if we can just address the mental health issue, I think it's a bit of a scapegoat, in all honesty.
In a national survey taken in 2013, almost half of those asked said they believed mentally ill people were more dangerous than other members of society. And yet, less than 5% of all gun violence in America can be attributed to people with mental illness.
Do you feel the defendant was mentally ill?
I don't care if he's mentally ill or not. That's irrelevant to me. There are a lot of people that are mentally ill that don't go out and kill people. So I really think it's a disservice to the mentally ill to project it that way.
I think what we see, and probably not as widely publicized, every single day in the United States is the person who you would think if they lived next door to you is the most ordinary, law-abiding, loving person who comes home and annihilates his or her family, mostly his.
People with a prior criminal history, a history of domestic violence, alcohol abuse, or anyone who's been charged with driving under the influence is far more likely to shoot someone than a person who suffers from mental illness.
Most people don't realize most mass shootings are actually stem from domestic violence and involve men killing estranged wives and their children.
To think of gun violence solely as a crime issue tends to ignore literally almost 2/3 of the gun deaths that occur.
In 2013, there were more than 33,000 total gun deaths. 21,000 of those were self-inflicted.
We really like to see gun violence as a public health issue rather than a Second Amendment issue.
Public health falls under the jurisdiction of the CDC, the Centers for Disease Control.
The medical community, the public health community in the 1980s and early 1990s began to turn their attentions increasingly to gun violence, viewing it in the way that they have viewed other threats to public health.
In 1966, after a continuous increase in motor vehicle-related fatalities, the government approached car accidents as a public health threat.
Behind a determined movement to bring child transportation safety to the forefront are volunteers, mostly mothers of young children.
A variety of legislation was passed to make driving safer. As a result, the annual death rate from car accidents has decreased 80%. Using this model, the CDC turned its sights on gun violence as a threat to public health. The results of the research made the CDC public enemy number 1 for the NRA.
The NRA was infuriated with a 1993 study sponsored by the CDC that concluded having a gun at home offered little protection, but increased almost threefold the risk of one family member shooting another.
When they saw the outcome of that research, they freaked out, and they made sure that Congress completely defunded all gun research.
The NRA simply does not want the facts getting out. It is no more than censorship. It must be stopped.
And the NRA went one step further, successfully lobbying Congress to put a restriction into the CDC budget, which stated none of the funds made available may be used to advocate or promote gun control.
It was a very effective tool because they can go out now and say gun laws don't work because we don't have the information to fight with them because they made sure we don't have the data to fight them.
What we've allowed to take place is shameful in this country, and we've turned our backs on it in the name of money and fear. What's going on? How you doing?
How you doing?
The reason we are protesting Chuck's today is because over 1,500 guns between 2009 and 2013 that were used in crimes in the city of Chicago were sold at Chuck's gun shop. They are the worst gun dealer in the country.
There's a big misperception that there's some black market for guns and that guns start out on a black market. in this country. Guns are not like drugs. They're not manufactured illicitly. Most are not sold illegally. The problem is how guns actually get on what winds up being a black market. And one of the big contributors to that is what we call bad apple gun dealers.
Currently, there are more gun stores than Starbucks and McDonald's combined. 5% of those gun stores are considered bad apples because they're responsible for selling 90% of the guns recovered from crimes.
A really reputable dealer, for instance, when they see a questionable transaction, will contact ATF and say, hey, we think this is a straw purchase. We think you need to come in and do something about it. But they're not under any legal obligation to do so.
Most gracious and wonderful Lord, we come to you right now, Father God, giving you thanks, honor, and praise for the brothers and sisters, for the men and women, for the boys and the girls that come together right now.
We don't have laws set up that limits gun sales, so you can go and buy 500 guns, 100 guns, nobody asks no questions, and they're not held accountable for the guns they purchase.
Stop selling guns that kill our kids! Stop selling guns that kill our kids!
How many more guns should Chuck sell from straw purchasers that put those guns onto our streets? Not one more.
Most often, the people of Chicago don't appreciate that there's such a tangible villain associated with this.
Second Amendment! Second Amendment! The Second Amendment with those flags! Why is our government taking away our constitutional rights?
This has nothing to do with Second Amendment rights. Our goal is to get them to adhere to a safer code of conduct, to commit to doing background checks as they should on all their gun sales, to videotape their gun sales, to only sell one handgun a month to purchasers so people can walk out of a gun store with a trunk full of handguns and then go and sell them on street corners.
Jess, how you doing? You're not breaking any laws?
It seems like the laws that we have need to be enforced more than creating new laws.
Adopt the code! Adopt the code!
ATF is limited by statute to one inspection per year per dealer. And in many cases, they don't have the resources to even do one a year.
Right now, somebody can go to a gun shop or a gun show and buy 200 guns legally, come back in the streets, sell them to anybody they want, and if that gun's found in a crime, and the police trace it back to me, they say, well, you understand you bought this at such and such gun shop. Wow, you know what? I must have lost it, or somebody must have stole it out of my car. Signed this thing stating that I'm free.
What Chicago needs isn't more gun legislation. What Chicago needs is more gun ownership among the good guys.
Don't wait on the police! Don't wait on the police! Don't wait on the police!
We don't want to say, we have a problem and it's guns. Guns are our problem. We want to say it's mentally disturbed people. It's criminals. It's bad people. And guns protect us from them. They don't. They do not.
Could you please tell the jury about what you remember about the day of July 19th of 2012?
We started off our day a little late. I was up here on vacation. We went to the Coors Brewery.
I'm going to stop you for a second. Who's we?
We, Jessica and myself.
Who's Jessica?
Jessica Gowie. After much persuasion, she twisted my arm, essentially. She's like, I never thought I'd have to twist a guy's arm to go see Batman. But any which way, we decided to go see the midnight release. We went through the motions. We got our tickets. She had this obsession with this weird popcorn salt stuff, so she got her fix there. We made our way into the theater, and
I have Jesse's last text. Yes, just going to the movies. You okay? Can't sleep. What movie did you see? We were seeing The Dark Knight. Enjoy. Talk to you tomorrow. Get some sleep, Mom. I'm really excited for you to come visit. Need my mama. Need my baby girl. I still do.
What happened during the movie?
I remember hearing a hissing noise coming from the front right of the theater. And it drew my attention over there, but being that it was dark, I couldn't see anything. Shortly thereafter, I saw what was making the hissing noise being hurled across the theater. There was this brief pause as soon as it hit the area of people. And then this surreal effect happened. It's like a drop of water hitting, and this wave of people just erupted away from where the object had been thrown. And I was kind of puzzled at first, and then the first shot rang out.
Hello, 911, where's your emergency? Help! Hello? Help!
What do you recall after that first shot rang out?
Of course, mass panic, chaos, people screaming.
Hello, 911, where's your emergency? Hello, 911, where's your emergency? I can't hear you. What address? Hello? Hello, can you tell me anything?
We stood up and we started to make our way to the right to exit our row. We got about 1 seat length down the way, and I realized that people aren't moving out of the way fast enough, and I pushed us to the ground.
When you say us?
Jessica and myself.
Has somebody been shot?
The whole time she was screaming.
Sir, what's going on?
And I looked down to see that she'd been shot in her right leg.
Oh my God! I got shot! It's all over my hands, man. Hello, 911, where's your emergency?
My first step from there was just to control the bleeding, so I applied pressure to her gunshot wound. Again, there was a continued spray of popcorn and soda, and that was when I sustained a shot.
Okay, what auditorium are they shooting in? Number 9. Let me get a radio. Auditorium 9. How many shots did they fire? 10, 20. Do you know if anybody's hurt? I hear screaming. They're still shooting. Okay. I'm fucking 17.
I noticed at this point that the screaming had stopped. And Jesse had sustained a shot to the head, in which case brain matter was exposed. It was at that point I crawled a little closer to her, and I prayed over her. Upon being escorted out of the theater, I called Sandy Phillips, Jessica's mother, and informed her that her daughter had been shot.
Did you call anyone else after you called Miss Phillips?
I called my own mother.
You want to take that moment, that right moment right there, and say, stop, just stop right there. Don't go a minute past here. You want to rewrite history. You want to rewrite. I mean, 40 minutes later, my whole world changed. Everything in our life turned upside down.
With Initiative 594, voters will decide the fate of gun legislation at a state level.
There we go. We got some numbers. Just got them. Okay. Skagit. That's bad. It's failed there. No, 6747.
A win could set a precedent. A loss would create a greater challenge for other states.
You ready, Bill? What kind of? Pierce. Okay. Yeah, we got Clallam, Jefferson, Kitsap, we're all ahead. Mason, we're ahead. Asotin, we're ahead. Spokane, we're ahead.
Snohomish County says 57,558 yes.
57558.
No. 38,070.
That's 60% Clark. No. Yes. Yes.
60%?
60% Clark. We're going to win.
937.
Another initiative sparked heated debate, but in the end, Washington voters approved 594, requiring universal background checks for gun buyers, including private sales and at gun shows.
The gun lobby is out of touch with America. They are out of touch with Washingtonians. And tonight we proved it. And we will no longer let them block the will of the people. Our mission to reduce gun violence. Tomorrow we celebrate, tonight we celebrate, and then we roll up our sleeves for more work ahead.
When I was involved working the civil rights movement, I remember one time getting on a bus. We were going to integrate something, and right before we all got on, got our instructions, somebody said, if you're not ready to die today, don't get on the bus. And I jumped back and I thought, well, when's the next bus? But the reality was, it made me think. I had to be willing to take the risk for what it is I think is right.
I cannot afford to lose another child in the streets of Chicago. I can't do it.
I'm committed to making sure there's a community where people feel safe, where I don't have a child when I say to them, what do you want to be when you grow up? And they say, alive. That a child would ever in 5th grade say, I want to be alive when I grow up? That's insane.
We have to make a change. We have to have...
People underestimate the amount of influence they have as an individual. They really do. Being married to a member of Congress, I kind of get that. You know, a member of Congress represents about 700,000 people. How many of those people you actually think pick up the phone and call the member of Congress's office, or shows up at an event to talk to them, or sends an email or writes a letter? Very few. But the ones who do have an incredible amount of influence.
But you remember how it is in the beginning.
I guess there is this unbreakable bond among families like yours and other people from all over the country.
Well, yeah, I think there's something to this experience that, connects people, unfortunately, but our end goal is to hopefully prevent other families from living through what we are.
Verdict form, count 5, murder in the 1st degree, Jessica Gawi. We, the jury, find the defendant, James Egan Holmes, guilty of murder in the 1st degree after deliberation.
This is all that's left of our daughter.
Change can happen.
Yes. It's your kid and your loved one. That's what keeps you motivated. Their life meant something. They were very important people, very valuable objects here on this earth. So as long as you're breathing, you're gonna continue to fight. And we're not fighting just for our kids, we're fighting for your kids. Because we don't want you to sit in this seat.
It's just still unbelievable. I look at his little handwriting, it's 2.5 years later, and I still can't believe he's fucking gone.
we have this cross to bear about not getting involved after Columbine, but we said, like so many other people, somebody's got to do something. And then nobody does anything. Or some they try and it doesn't work, so they give up. But this time it's different. We're not going away.
We've passed background check laws in Oregon, Washington, Delaware, Maryland, Connecticut, Colorado, and more.
With Oregon, we'll have 18 states that have gone ahead and closed their background check loophole in spite of Congress's inaction. Once you get to 25, that starts to be a tipping point.
Stopping gun violence takes courage. The courage to do what's right, the courage of new ideas. I've seen great courage when my life was on the line. Now is the time to come together, be responsible. Democrats, Republicans, everyone. We must never stop fighting. Fight, fight, fight. Be bold, be courageous. The nation's counting on you.
This was one of the makeshift crosses that were placed in front of the theater. The city of Aurora sent them to the victims' families. Quite frankly, I don't want it, you know. It's one of those things that I'll be very happy to have gone, you know. These crosses are built, people come, they lay flowers, they put teddy bears around, and then they go on with their lives and do nothing. You know, we say, I don't want your I'm sorries, and I don't want your prayers. I want your action. I want you to make a difference. So.
Sorrow found me when I was.
What are we doing here? Yeah?
Sorrow waited, sorrow won.
Jessica.
Sorrow, they put me on the pill.
You're such a dork.
It's in my honey, it's in my milk.
There's Terrell.
Don't leave my heart burn hard alone. On the water,
Put that away!
covering me in rag and bone. Sympathy, 'cause I don't wanna get over you. Don't need my hat full of heart alone. On the water, cover me in rag and bone. Sympathy, 'cause I don't wanna get over you. I don't wanna get over you. Sorrow's my body on the waves. Sorrow's a girl inside my cave. I live in a city sorrow built. It's in my honey, it's in my milk.